Fersan in the Field, Real Issues, Real Solutions is brought to you by Newport-Fersan, Jamaica Limited, the first on the land.
Time now for Fersan in the Field, Real Issues, Real Solutions. And this morning we're talking about sweet potatoes. What is the route to a successful sweet potato crop? We're going to find that out this morning from Melvin Henry, Technical Manager. Good morning, Melvin. How are you?
Good morning, Good morning to our listeners. I'm doing great.
Good to have you on with us. And also joining us this morning is Chavan Lyttle, and Chavan is Product Development Agronomist. Good morning, Chavan, and welcome back to the show. How are you?
Morning, Althea. I'm giving thanks, man.
Good to have you on with us. And Chavan, I'm going to start with you. Sweet potatoes are undoubtedly among the several crops that are grown in large acreages across the island. And I wondered, what are some of the driving forces accounting for this? Why are people growing sweet potatoes like this across the length and breadth of the island?
Well, Althea, I want to tell you this. Sweet potato is considered an underutilized crop in the Caribbean with a large potential. So,
really? Despite all of this that we're seeing, this interest?
Yeah, so that is one of the reasons we're seeing such a large interest in it, right? So we've had many of our organizations, government and NGOs as well, who have been promoting this crop as an indispensable asset in developing our nation's food security and as an economically viable crop. And in Jamaica, sweet potato is a major staple. So it is one of the most highly demanded tubers in the island. It is required for export market, for the fresh food market, as well as for the agro-processing industry. And in fact, in 2016, over 48,000 metric ton was produced. And of that which was produced, 96.8 of it was utilized locally, right? So in addition to all of this, sweet potato, it is adapted to the local climatic conditions that we have here in Jamaica. Not to mention the fact that it also have varieties which are tolerant to drought. So in addition to that, it provides a wide range of benefits to us when we use it. It has nutritional importance. It can be used in many culinary activities, can be agro-processed. Not to mention the leaves, the stems, the unmarketable tubers, all of these byproducts can be used as animal feed. So all of these combined is contributing to why we're seeing such large acreage being produced in Jamaica.
That is wonderful, and clearly there is as I listen to you, an underscoring of the importance of these potatoes to the market here in Jamaica and the Caribbean region. And as you so rightly point out, a lot of untapped potential. Let me bring Melvin in. Melvin, even though sweet potato demand has increased over the years due to the growing knowledge of farmers continue to struggle with the issue of low productivity though. So help us to understand what are some of the primary factors that contribute to low yields that some farmers are experiencing.
Okay, so as you rightly put it, Althea, there is a growing demand for the crop based on increased knowledge, but there is still that struggle, continued struggle, to be as productive as we should. Now, there are several factors, as you rightly indicated, and one of those have to do with the issue of viruses that affects the crop. Now, sweet potato viruses have been cited as one of, if not the single most limiting factor, significantly impacting both the growth and the yield of sweet potato plants for years. And this is a phenomenon that is worldwide. In fact, there are some parts where some countries in Europe, for example, where the existence of several viruses would have decimated the sweet potato crop production, and as a result, accessing sweet potato by a lot of these regions got to be via importation. So for this conversation, I would like us to turn attention to two of the most common and devastating viruses affecting sweet potato production. The first being the sweet potato feathery mottle virus. Mottle virus, as the name suggests, what you tend to see happening on the leaf of the plant is that there's just mottled spots and smears of color. So you don't have this steady color that you should have in terms of that green, but instead you're seeing that mottled spots here and there. But just before we delve into the finer details of these two viruses, which I'll look at briefly, I just want us to look back at what exactly a virus is. Now, a virus is referred to as a submicroscopic infectious agent. And what that means simply is that it is too small to be seen with the naked eyes. In fact, the light microscope and normal microscope will not reveal the presence of a viral particle. And what these particles does when they enter the system of a plant is that they replicate. So you start with, for example, 2, and then in quick succession, quick time, that there's that replication. And what that does is that it interferes with the normal processes within the system of the plant. So you start to have blockage of very important conductive tissues. So those pathways through which nutrients and water is taken up by the plant is now clogged, and as a result of that, not being able to access food in the foliage, you're now seeing segments of the leaf or sections of the leaves having either chlorotic, either red or purpling of the leaves. You have the twisting of the leaves, the curling in some instances. So these are some of what happens because the virus is within the system of the plant. So plant viruses, as the name suggests, are those that affect plants, because in reality, viruses are the most common of microorganisms in the world, on the planet, and nothing is spared of being infected by a virus. So animals are, plants are, even microorganisms themselves. So you have, for example, some fungus that can be infected by a virus known as mycoviruses. So the feathery mottle virus, once the plant is infected, the sweet potato plant is infected, what you generally see is that the leaves, as I said before, have a mottled effect. So you're seeing spots, and normally these spots are normally chlorotic, meaning they're yellow, faint yellow. You'd also see purple pigmentation around the border. So if you look at the older leaves of the sweet potato plant, it is evident at times that you're seeing this tint of purpling. And the thing about the purpling algae is that it can be easily confused, if not experienced enough, with a phosphorus deficiency. Right? So there is always need to have a trained eye in diagnosing and understanding what is really happening with the plant. The symptoms, as I said before, are normally found on the older leaves, and if severely infected, the plant becomes stunted and the leaves are significantly smaller. Right? So the question is, how does all of this, the symptoms that I'm referring to, affects or come to bear on the yield of the sweet potato crop? Now, it is to be understood and remember that the leaves of every plant is considered the manufacturing center. So whether you're reaping a fruit, above or below ground you're reaping a tuber, the production of what is stored takes place within the leaves. Now, if you're having compromised leaves in terms of smaller leaves and leaves that do not fit the bill in terms of them having the shade that they should, it simply means that the process of photosynthesis is severely impacted. So the plant is not in a position to manufacture food to be sent and stored below ground in the root tuber, in this case, the sweet potato plant. So that's how the impact of the virus comes to bear on the yield of the sweet potato crop. It must also be noted that while the leaf symptoms vary, because based on variety, climatic condition, and the age of the plant, it must be noted that there are some instances where the viral infection is present within the plant and there is no noticeable change to the leaves. So your leaves appear normal. You only realize that something is off at the time when you are about to harvest your potatoes. So you realize that there is something wrong. There is a decrease in the tuber yields. So when you start to harvest, you realize that there are few. You realize that you have narrow storage roots, meaning the potatoes themselves. So one farmer or the same farmer might experience planting the same variety before, having tubers that have a certain girth, width. And for this, the subsequent crop, they realize that there is some level of production, but not as before. And this is because the viral load in the system of the plant has affected how the diameter, the production of the tubers. In some instances,
all right, and Melvin, hold on to that. We're past the break, so let me just clear commercials and come back.
Farmers, you can now prevent and cure fungal diseases with Eradicate Systemic Fungicide from Newport-Fersan, Jamaica Limited. Eradicate is effective against rust in coffee, citrus, sugarcane and peanut, black and yellow secatoka, early blight, mildews, purple blotch in onions, and other fungal diseases. Get your Eradicate at your nearest farm store or at the Newport-Fersan office, 2A2B Worry Wharf Complex. Stay in control with Eradicate.
Inside the feature Fersan in the Field, Real Issues, Real Solutions. Our topic this morning, route to a successful sweet potato crop. We have with us Melvin Henry, Technical Manager, and Chavan, Lyttle, Product Development Agronomist. We have already heard that sweet potato is one of those crops that are grown widely across the island, but there are challenges because even though the sweet potato demand has increased, farmers are still struggling with the issue of low productivity. And Melvin Henry is in the middle of talking to us now about viral issues that have led to some of the decline that farmers see in terms of their overall production figures, even when they would perhaps have had a good experience in the past. Sometimes when they get to the point where they are now reaping, that's when they realize that there's an issue. And Melvin is talking about the viral issues that, or the viral load that would have led to some of these challenges. Melvin?
Yes, Alta. So we have been talking about the sweet potato mottle virus and how it impacts productivity of the plant. And knowledge of its spread is also a very crucial component of managing the transmission. So the virus is actually transmitted by aphids, and the aphids generally acquire the virus feeding on infected plants and then transmitting same to healthy plants within seconds. So the virus is picked up whilst they're feeding on their feeding part, And then once they attempt to feed on a plant that is uninfected, that's when the transmission of the virus takes place. So that is a crucial part of the knowledge that will be important in how we go about managing the disease. The next one that I look at briefly is the sweet potato chlorotic stunt virus, formerly referred to as dwarf virus. And as the name suggests, once infected, the sweet potato plant tends to show signs of yellowing, signified or denoted by the chlorotic, and also stunt, meaning that it grows at a rate way slower than it should. And if this condition progresses, you could also have the leaves showing purple in discoloration, depending on the severity, depending on the variety, and the stage of maturity of the crop. Now, unlike the federal motley virus, which is transmitted by an aphid, the sweet potato chlorotic stunt virus is transmitted by whiteflies. So the reality is the presence of whiteflies within a sweet potato field is reason enough to suspect that there could be the transmission of the sweet potato chlorotic stunt virus. And pretty much like the other virus, what it does, once it impairs the overall system of the plant, it's the plant's ability to manufacture food, then ultimately that will come to bear on the overall yield and output. And it should be noted that where both of these viruses are operating within the system of the same plant, then the synergistic effect, the combined effect, is very, very devastating. And it has been shown that the federal motley virus is more devastating if the chlorotic stunt virus is present within the plant. So those are two of the most common viruses that we have to be looking out for, because they have shown worldwide to be very devastating as it relates to productivity.
All right, thank you so very much, Melvin. And let us bring Chavan back in, because Chavan, site selection or inadequate land preparation issues can also lead to challenges with overall output and production. Can you just tell us more about this, because this is clearly very important?
Indeed it is, Althea. When we speak about land preparation or site selection, it's very important to consider our drainage type and placement, because based on where the land is, the drainage will play a pivotal role when we are going to manage adverse weather conditions such as heavy rainfall events. So if our land is on hilly terrain, we want to have our head drains to channel the water away from the crop, because this water, if it flows through the crop, it can cause severe erosion of the field and ultimately loss of the crop. Another important thing when we talk about land preparation is soil tilth, and this refers to the condition of the soil as it relates to plant growth, with good soil tilth favoring easy germination and root proliferation, allowing for the crop to thrive. So we want to ensure that the soil we're cultivating our sweet potato in has a very good soil tilth, so that we can have proper tuber development. And that, what we mean by that, is to have a deep growth and adequate expansion or swelling of those tubers, because it should be noted that sweet potatoes can grow to a depth of up to 12 inches deep. So all of this is very important if we want to get those good size tubers when we're harvesting.
Right, so very important. And of course, as we talk about pest and disease management as well, that is also important, because it's not just the nutrition of the crops. It's not just recognizing that there are issues out there in the field in terms of site selection and how it is that you prepare the land, but there must be a pest and disease management in place, and pest and disease management program in place. Can you just talk to us a little bit about this, Chavan? Because of course it is important for us to have our farmers put in place such a system. What are some of these strategies that they need to employ?
Excellent, Althea. And pest and disease management, it really has 6 steps to it. And this is a part of the IPM approach, which we always promote, and we cannot emphasize the importance of it to the long-term sustainable cultivation of crops, right? So when we talk about sweet potato, the first 3 important things that we want to our farmers to remember when it comes down to pest and disease management is, 1, they need to identify what the issues they usually experience are. 2, they need to begin to put in preventative measures. 3, they need to monitor and assess the situation, and this will inform the next steps or the different actions which they need to take. So when we talk about IPM in sweet potato, we want to draw close attention to the planting material that our farmers are using, especially as it relates to the selection of this planting material to establish a new field and what should be done to these planting materials. So planting materials, when you're selecting them, it should be free from pest and disease and overall have a healthy appearance, right? And what we want our farmers to do, we want our farmers to treat these planting materials before taking them from where to their farm. So wherever they're going to purchase the slips from, we want them to treat it at that location. And we recommend farmers to use a pesticide dip. So in the pesticide dip, and this is where I'm going to just briefly mention some of our products that farmers can incorporate to help assist in managing some of the pests and disease that potentially could cause harm to a new field that is being established. So we want our pesticide dip to contain Clearway and Spectra, to control any fungal and most of the insect pests that can cause an issue, as well as Plant Start, which will help to stimulate quick root development and sprouting of that new slip in the field. Once we've established the field as well, we want to begin treatment with our viricide, that is the star viricide, which will help to manage any viral load that or viral particles that might already be in the planting materials, so that it doesn't significantly impact the production and productivity of that field. In addition to these, we want our farmers to be practicing throughout the growing season some additional steps, right? So critical is weed management. We want our farmers to ensure that weeds within the field, especially for the early phase of the crop, that's like the first 2 months of your sweet potato crop, is removed, because these will compete with the plants for resources like water and nutrients and sunlight, and also they will serve as an alternative host for some of these pests that we've mentioned. So we want the weeds to be kept low or removed from the field, as well as want the weeds around our plots, because oftentimes we forget that weeds are also around our plot. We want to keep the around our plots free of weeds as well, because as I mentioned earlier, alternative host for the pest means that once you spray, in no time the pests will repopulate your field. Right? So these are some of the things that we want our farmers to practice. As well, there are some other techniques that they can use, so like pheromone traps to help deal with the issue of sweet potato weevil, or sticky traps to help them monitor the level of some of our flying insects like the white flies that Mr. Henry mentioned earlier. These will help our farmers to visualize the level of infestation, and that will allow them now to better be able to know when they need to apply the various pesticides. So pesticides that we have that can help to control the white flies or the aphids, which serve as vector for the viruses that was mentioned earlier, include our Spectra and as well as our Sucker. In addition to those insects. We have some other insects that would affect our sweet potatoes, namely the sweet potato stem borer, the sweet potato leaf beetle, as well as the sweet potato webworm. So all of these, especially the stem borer and leaf beetle, in their larval stage can cause significant damage to the tubers, making them unmarketable. Whereas the webworm will feed excessively on the foliage, skeletonizing them, resulting in reduced photosynthetic production and ultimately impacting adversely the yield of the sweet potatoes.
All right, so quite a bit for us to sink our teeth into in terms of the challenges that the farmers might face, but of course providing the solutions as well, which is in fact what this feature is all about. Gentlemen, hold on, we still have some more information to pull out of you, so we'll do that right after this break.
To Power 106 FM, the time is now
6:46.
Introducing the Keyplex line of products distributed by Newport-Fersan Jamaica Limited. Keyplex Jumpstart to get your plants off to the right start. KP 120 to promote root growth and plant development. 350 DP, chock full of micronutrients to maintain your crops. KP 625 with micronutrients for your citrus trees, other fruit trees, nut trees, and corn. Plus Blossom Formula with chelated calcium, chelated magnesium, and boron for a wide variety of row and tree crops. The Keyplex line of products distributed by Newport-Fersan Jamaica Limited, the first on the land.
Right, so we are concluding our conversation now with Melvin Henry, Technical Manager, and Chavan Lyttle, Product Development Agronomist, and they're both from Newport-Fersan, and we're talking about a route to a successful sweet potato crop. Melvin, let me come with you, because having gone through some of these issues and challenges, we now need to take a look at the strategies that you would recommend for managing and preventing the viruses that you have spoken about, or some of the viruses that we have spoken about. And then, of course, Chavan, will come back to you to talk about the issue of soil and how it is that you all are helping farmers in that regard. Melvin?
Okay, so Mr. Lyttle would have spent quite a bit of time just now looking at several strategies. But just before I do my own addition to that segment, it would be remiss of me not to mention that another glaring factor contributing to low yields is the way in which we utilize fertilizer for the crop in question, sweet potato. Now, sweet potato, like any other crop, requires a total of 16 essential elements. Now, each crop has its own unique, what we refer to as ratio, in which it abstracts, it takes up the nutrients. And this is because of the difference in how the plant itself is structured genetically. Now, interesting to note, the sweet potato crop, if it is that it's going to produce satisfactory, it needs to be feeding at a ratio of 1 part nitrogen to 3 to 4 parts potassium. So what it means, for every 1 part potassium, nitrogen that the plant requires, it needs 3 to 4 times that same quantity in potassium. Now, the reason for this, Altia, is that the crop being how it is genetically, if you apply excessive nitrogen to the crop, what you'll find happening, and this is the experience of too many of our farmers, what you'll find happening is that you'll have a lush looking field. Yes? Lush. But at the time of harvest, what you'll realize is that you have tuberous roots that are growing, elongating, and they're not swelling or they're not developing sideways. The reason for this is because the excessive nitrogen enters the tips of the plant. So it enters the tips of the shoot system and it says so the shoot system grow taller. The same thing happens to the root system. If it is in excess, not in the right balance with potassium, it is saying to the system grow, and it continues to run. So oftentimes farmers will pull up roots that are in excess of 2 feet, 16 inches. In fact, what should have happened is that that root system should have stopped at about 8, 10 inches, thereabout, or shorter, depending on the variety, and then starts to develop sideways. Now, because the ratio between the potassium and the nitrogen is off, that is the net result. So we need to determine what it is that we're working with. So you cannot just pick a blend randomly like that without having proper assessment of. So in the light of the fact that we realize that a lot of our farmers are not yet doing the soil analysis, there was the development of this blend 8-21-32. 1 part nitrogen, 8 times 4, 32 potassium. And that off the bat, just plucking something from the shelves, represents probably your best go. Now, in order to correct that problem, we need to determine what it is that we have, because we have done soil tests and we realize that some areas, they're loaded with potassium. So there's absolutely no need for you to be securing or buying potassium at this point in time for your crop. So that is one of the issues, and we have been working, and several of our farmers who have worked with us in this regard can speak abundantly about the changes in terms of how the crop appears and ultimately the yield at the back end. So nutrition is another issue that we seek to address on a daily basis.
All right. So just before I go back to Chavan, a question here. Listener says he has a lime and orange tree that has a white fungus on it, and he's asking what chemical he can use to prevent the trees from dying. Melvin?
Oh, I thought I heard you said. I thought I heard you say.
No, I was saying just before I go to Chavan. I was asking you the question, and then I'll go to Chavan.
Okay, one of the things that we normally recommend is that if it is that we're addressing an issue, it must be properly diagnosed. So I would appreciate if there could be the sharing of pictures, close-up pictures of the condition we're speaking of, and also the sharing of contact, so we could have one of our technical persons drop by to see exactly what is happening. Thereafter, we'll be in a better position to make a recommendation.
All right, makes a whole lot of sense to me, because you have to know exactly what you're dealing with before
Absolutely.
You can actually get into a diagnosis. All right, let us bring Chavan back in, because Chavan, I know that a lot of the work that you all do there at Newport-Fersan, although you are a fertilizer company, you do a lot of work in terms of the status of the soil, and then moving on to designing an appropriate nutrient management system. So can you just talk to us a little bit about this?
Yes, Althea. So the first step in any program that we are providing our farmer with is an assessment of their operation. And by assessment, and by extension of an assessment of their operation, this oftentimes leads to us conducting a soil test, right? And what the soil test does, it gives us a foundation or a basis upon which to work on, allowing us to understand what the chemical and physical properties of the soil is that our farmers have, so that the management steps that we take in terms of nutrient recommendation, in terms of soil amelioration, all of those are aligned with what is present in the soil, so that the farmers have a more precise approach at cultivation. So to achieve this, there are numerous things that we do in helping us to have appropriate nutrient management guide for our farmers. So in addition to the soil test, we also provide technical advice, technical field visits, we do field appraisal, and of course we can't forget this one, farmer training, where we go into the various farming areas and teach our farmers about the good practices associated with the crops that they're cultivating, as well as share with them some advances that are taking place as it relates to the technologies that are available to them to improve their productivity. In addition to this, oh, go ahead.
No, I thought you were finished because you paused there for a bit. So I thought you were finished, but you only have 30 seconds to finish that thought. And then, as a matter of fact, just jump right into the announcements before we run out of time.
Not a problem. I also wanted to stress that we know most of our farmers cultivate sweet potato. A large percentage of our sweet potato farmers are grown under rain-fed conditions. So for rain-fed conditions, there are times when we have drought, like now, where their ability of the plant to take nutrients from the soil is greatly impacted. So we have foliar nutrition that can assist our farmers in bridging the gap in terms of providing the nutrients to the crops during these periods of dryness. So the plant start is an excellent product to help assist the plants to weather the storm as it may be in relation to adverse environmental conditions. And in terms of the announcements that we have, we just want to remind our farmers that we have several upcoming activities in the month of May, which our farmers can, if they're in the area, they can pop on by and interact with our technical officers out there in the field. Right? And so the activities that we have upcoming, the first one is going to be May 4th and 5th in Mount River Garden, St. James, where we have the St. James Horticultural Society putting on the Bloom and Burnt Oat Mother Nature event. So any farmers in the area can stop on by there. The next activity that we have will be May 24, 2024, and this is at the Jamaica Agricultural Society, Hanover, and it's their agricultural show that will be held at the Lord's Playfield in Lucy. So our officers will be there. So we encourage our farmers to come on by and interact with them. If they have any issues, any challenges, can bring it to our officers, and they will more than happy to help them. And the last activity. All right, and Chavan,
you have to give it 10 seconds. 10 seconds to mention that last one.
So we have the Saint-Based Agri-Fest on May 31st in Santa Cruz at the Social Development Commission Complex. So farmers in that area can also come on by and be a part of the festivities.
And I'm sure that we'll hear more about some of those activities in which you're participating. Thank you both for this morning.
No problem, Auntie.
All right, take care. A quick word and then we wrap the show.
Fersan in the Field, Real Issues, Real Solutions was brought to you by Newport-Fersan Jamaica Limited, the first on the land.